January 1945. A pale winter sun struggles to pierce the frozen sky over northern Germany. The roar of engines cuts through the icy air as a flight of P-51D Mustangs streaks across the horizon, their silver bodies glinting like sharpened steel. The wind whistles past the cockpit canopy, vibrating with every motion of the controls. Below, the patchwork of fields and villages lies quiet, unaware of the thunder approaching from above. The pilots grip their sticks, eyes scanning for the first sign of enemy fighters. A sudden glint, black crosses on silver wings, reveals a formation of Messerschmitt Bf WF-109s, confident and lethal. For a heartbeat, the German pilots underestimate the newcomers. They had heard of the Mustangs, but intelligence had downplayed their firepower. Then it happens. 6.50 caliber machine guns unleash a storm of tracer fire, cutting through the sky and twisting the air with smoke and sparks. In mere seconds, the illusion shatters. The Luftwaffe pilots' confidence turns to panic. Their formations break. One moment they are hunters, the next, hunted. The P-51D has arrived, and the balance of the skies is about to change forever. By 1944, the skies over Europe had become the most contested battleground of the Second World War. Factories, rail lines, and cities became targets in a relentless effort to bring the Third Reich to its knees. But this campaign faced a persistent problem: Luftwaffe fighters. The German Air Force, though increasingly stretched thin, remained a formidable opponent. Experienced pilots, many hardened from earlier campaigns in France and the Eastern Front, took to the skies in Messerschmitt Bf 1009s and Focke-Wulf Fw 190s. These aircraft were agile, heavily armed, and deadly in the hands of skilled flyers. They roamed the European theater, defending industrial centers and hunting Allied bombers with ruthless efficiency. Allied bombers, primarily the B-17 Flying Fortress and the B-24 Liberator, were designed for high-altitude precision strikes. Their crews were trained to endure flak, enemy fighters, and freezing temperatures, often over long missions deep into enemy territory. However, without sufficient fighter escort, bomber losses were catastrophic. In early 1944, missions over Germany routinely resulted in dozens of aircraft shot down, leaving crews and commanders desperate for a solution. Enter the P-51 Mustang. Originally designed in 1940 to meet a British requirement, the early Mustangs impressed with speed and range, but were limited in high-altitude performance. The transformation came when the Mustang was fitted with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine. Suddenly, it could match and exceed Luftwaffe fighters at altitude, offering both speed and maneuverability. The P-51D variant, introduced in late 1943, carried 6 50 caliber Browning machine guns, giving it unprecedented firepower for a single-engine fighter. The strategic implications were immense. The Allies could now escort bombers deep into the heart of Germany, reducing attrition and forcing the Luftwaffe into defensive postures. German pilots, who had grown accustomed to hunting bombers with relative impunity, now faced a new and formidable opponent. The Mustang was not just faster, it was lethal in ways that would quickly shatter their assumptions about air superiority. American pilots trained rigorously before being deployed to European skies. Many were young men, barely into their 20s, thrust into a theater of war dominated by seasoned veterans. Yet the P-51D's capabilities leveled the playing field, giving these young aviators the confidence to confront the Luftwaffe head-on. The combination of technological superiority and disciplined training began to tip the scales. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe was fighting a multi-front war in the air. Pilots were overextended, aircraft production was declining due to Allied bombing, and experienced flyers were being lost faster than replacements could be trained. The German High Command underestimated the impact that the P-51D would have. Intelligence reports mentioned its presence, but few could grasp the deadly efficiency of 6.5 guns firing in unison, capable of shredding both enemy fighters and bomber formations alike. By the summer of 1944, Mustang-equipped fighter groups were regularly engaging German aircraft over France and the Low Countries. The P-51D's combination of speed, range, and firepower allowed pilots to attack on their own terms, choosing when and where to engage. Luftwaffe units began noticing a shift. Their previously dominant tactics were faltering, and surprise attacks were no longer guaranteed. The skies were becoming a place where overconfidence could be deadly, and the reputation of the P-51D spread quickly among German pilots. Yet for many Luftwaffe aviators, the first encounters were shocking. Initial reconnaissance and intelligence had downplayed the Mustang's capabilities. Reports described it as another Allied fighter, no different from earlier models. They did not anticipate its ability to dive, turn, and deliver devastating fire in moments. When confronted, German pilots found themselves facing an aircraft that combined speed, firepower, and endurance in a package that seemed almost impossibly effective. These early encounters were only the beginning. The stage was set for a clash of human skill, technological innovation, and tactical adaptation. The P-51D Mustang, underestimated and misjudged, was about to change the calculus of air combat over Europe, forcing German pilots to confront a reality they had not expected. A reality where confidence could turn to chaos in the span of a few seconds. As 1944 progressed, the air war over Europe became a complex interplay of technology, tactics, and sheer endurance. Allied bombers pushed ever deeper into Germany, escorted by fighter groups that had evolved from a defensive screen into an offensive threat. The P-51D Mustang, with its Merlin engine and 6.50 caliber Browning machine guns, was central to this transformation. Its long range allowed pilots to accompany bombers from England across France and into the heart of Germany territory that had previously been a death zone for unescorted bombers. Allied fighter doctrine emphasized flexibility. Mustang pilots flew in tight formations, covering each other's blind spots while maintaining offensive potential. Escort missions were no longer passive. The fighters could seek out Luftwaffe units before they reached the bombers. Speed, altitude, and firepower became tactical tools. A single P-51D could dive from a higher altitude, unleash a burst of 50 caliber fire, and climb back to safety before the enemy could react. This combination of hit-and-run tactics and superior maneuverability gave Allied pilots a psychological edge as well. On the German side, the Luftwaffe faced growing logistical and strategic challenges. Experienced pilots were being lost at alarming rates, and replacements often lacked the training to handle increasingly sophisticated Allied aircraft. The Bf 20109 and W190 remained formidable in the hands of veterans, but their effectiveness was diminishing against coordinated Mustang attacks. Fuel shortages, maintenance backlogs, and the cumulative effects of sustained bombing further weakened German air power. Luftwaffe commanders were forced into reactive strategies. Instead of seeking out the enemy, they often had to wait for Allied aircraft to enter defensive zones near industrial centers. By the time German fighters engaged, they were frequently outnumbered or outmaneuvered. This shift was particularly evident during escort missions over targets like Berlin, the Ruhr Valley, and Dresden, where the P-51Ds had the freedom to dictate engagements. The Germans underestimated the impact of the Mustang's firepower, assuming it was comparable to older Allied fighters. They did not anticipate the concentrated effect of 6.50 caliber guns firing nearly simultaneously, capable of shredding fuselages and wings within seconds. The psychological dimension cannot be overstated. Pilots entering these missions faced split-second decisions that could mean life or death. For German pilots accustomed to earlier encounters where bomber formations were vulnerable, the sudden aggression and precision of Mustang attacks induced shock and hesitation. Confidence eroded rapidly, and once formations began to falter under concentrated fire, the outcomes became increasingly one-sided. Reports from Luftwaffe veterans describe moments where their aircraft were torn apart before they could effectively respond, a terrifying introduction to a fighter they had previously underestimated. Meanwhile, the Allies refined tactics to exploit every advantage of the Mustang. Pilots were trained to coordinate attacks, maintain altitude superiority, and focus fire on enemy fighters in groups. Radio communication allowed for rapid adjustments mid-flight, while intelligence on Luftwaffe patterns informed mission planning. The combination of preparation, training, and technological edge meant that Mustang pilots were not just fighting for survival, they were actively shaping the air war. This evolution of air combat also demonstrated the role of innovation in warfare. The P-51D was not simply a faster or better fighter, it represented a shift in the balance of power in the skies. German pilots, once dominant, found that their previous assumptions no longer held. The Mustang's speed allowed it to control engagements, its guns delivered destructive bursts in seconds, and its endurance ensured it could strike where German forces were least prepared. Every encounter emphasized a new reality. Overconfidence could no longer be tolerated, and underestimating the enemy was lethal. The stage was set for intense aerial confrontations, in which experience, skill, and technology collided. Each sortie tested the limits of human courage and mechanical precision, setting up moments where seconds decided the fate of pilots and the broader trajectory of the air war. German airmen were about to learn, often painfully, that the P-51D Mustang was not just another fighter. It was a weapon capable of rewriting the rules of engagement in the European theater. For the young men who climbed into the P-51D cockpit, every mission was a test of nerves, skill, and endurance. Many were barely out of their teens, facing a seasoned enemy with decades of combined combat experience. Yet the Mustang instilled confidence. Its responsiveness allowed pilots to maneuver with precision, dive and climb aggressively, and engage or disengage at will. Crews described the feeling of the throttle vibrating under their hands, the wings slicing through thin winter air, and the exhilaration of pulling a controlled loop before lining up on an unsuspecting Bf-1009. For German pilots, the first sight of these sleek Mustangs coming out of the sun was terrifying. They had faced countless Allied fighters before, but the speed, firepower, and aggressive tactics of the P-51D created moments of pure panic. One Luftwaffe veteran later recalled how entire formations could crumble in seconds, pilots breaking off or ejecting under sudden, precise bursts of 50 caliber fire. The human cost was immediate, and morale became as crucial as technical skill. The P-51D Mustang was a triumph of engineering. Its laminar flow wing design reduced drag, allowing for higher speeds at altitude. Combined, These features made it one of the most formidable fighters of the war. The A-50s could fire approximately 1,200 rounds in under 15 seconds, a staggering rate that allowed pilots to disable enemy fighters almost instantly. The aircraft's range of over 1,600 miles enabled it to escort bombers deep into Germany, fundamentally changing Allied air strategy. In contrast, the Luftwaffe's primary fighters, the Bf-109 and Tfu-90, could match the Mustang in bursts of speed and maneuverability, but lacked endurance for prolonged engagements. Technological superiority gave the Allies not just an edge in combat, but the ability to dictate when, where, and how battles unfolded. The Mustang's introduction forced a rethink of aerial tactics. Escort missions transformed from defensive screens into proactive hunting operations. Pilots could climb to altitude, dive on enemy formations, deliver concentrated fire, and withdraw before the Luftwaffe could respond. This ability to control the timing and location of engagements reshaped air battles. Mustang formations were often spread out to cover multiple bomber streams, yet coordinated enough to mass firepower precisely where it was needed. German pilots, expecting predictable defensive patterns, were caught off guard. The P-51D allowed Allied forces to shift from reactionary defense to offensive dominance, giving strategic control of contested airspace. The German pilots underestimated the Mustang's capabilities at first. Intelligence reports had labeled it as another Allied fighter, no more dangerous than earlier models. That perception quickly shattered. The speed, maneuverability, and concentrated firepower created a new threat that outclassed their previous experiences. Luftwaffe tactics, once effective against slower or shorter range Allied fighters, failed. Experienced pilots noted that the P-51D could appear suddenly, fire with lethal precision, and retreat before they could respond. This miscalculation disrupted formations, caused confusion, and eroded morale. Entire sorties could be thrown into chaos in seconds, illustrating how underestimated technology can destabilize even a veteran air force. These four angles: human, technological, tactical, and enemy, intertwine to show the full picture of the P-51D's impact. The Mustang was not simply another fighter. It was a catalyst that changed the psychology, strategy, and outcomes of aerial combat in Europe. Allied commanders recognized the potential of the P-51D early on. Leaders like General Jimmy Doolittle and Air Marshal Sir Arthur Harris understood that control of the skies was as critical as ground offensives. By deploying Mustang groups to escort bombers, they ensured both the protection of valuable aircraft and the disruption of Luftwaffe operations. Tactical planning emphasized altitude advantage, coordinated attacks, and target prioritization. Commanders trained pilots not merely to survive, but to dominate engagements. The result was a systematic degradation of German air power. The leadership strategy amplified the Mustang's strengths, converting individual aircraft performance into a force multiplier across entire theaters of operation. For Luftwaffe pilots, the first encounters with the P-51D were jarring. Reports from veterans recount moments of disbelief, a sudden burst of 6.50 caliber rounds tearing through aircraft structures within seconds. Pilots who had survived countless missions found their confidence shattered in an instant. Fear spread rapidly through squadrons. Hesitation, once minor, became fatal. The psychological effect was compounded by the Mustang's ability to strike, vanish, and reappear at will. Confidence, once the Luftwaffe's advantage, became a liability, eroding cohesion and creating openings for Allied forces to exploit. As losses mounted, German pilots attempted to adapt. W-90s and Bf-109s adjusted altitude strategies, coordinated more carefully, and reinforced formations. But the Mustang's speed and firepower outmatched these efforts. Luftwaffe aces, who had excelled in earlier campaigns, found themselves outpaced and outgunned. Desperation forced some to engage recklessly, resulting in catastrophic losses. These adaptations highlighted the Mustang's dominance. It not only excelled in direct engagements, but also forced the enemy into reactive, often ineffective, behavior. Allied pilots trusted the Mustang, knowing its guns, engine, and maneuverability were superior. Conversely, German pilots learned that even skill and experience could not fully mitigate technological disadvantage. The aircraft's combination of range, speed, and firepower transformed every engagement into a high-stakes duel, where seconds decided life or death. Human courage and ingenuity were tested against mechanical efficiency, reshaping the psychological landscape of the air war. The convergence of leadership, tactical adaptation, technology, and human experience prepared the stage for decisive encounters. June 12, 1944. The skies over northern France are thick with the hum of engines and the distant rumble of anti-aircraft fire. Just days after D-Day, the Allies push deep into Normandy, escorting waves of B-17s and B-24s on missions to disrupt German reinforcements and supply lines. Mustang squadrons, freshly deployed and hungry for engagement, climb to intercept points high above the clouds, their polished silver skins reflecting sunlight like deadly mirrors. At 11:45 a.m., radar reports indicate a formation of 30 Fw-190s approaching from the northwest, intent on intercepting the bomber stream. Allied flight leaders order immediate engagement. The Mustangs, maintaining altitude superiority, dive in pairs, timing their approach to strike from the sun, blinding their opponents and limiting return fire. 6.5er guns roar simultaneously, tracer rounds streaking across the sky. In mere seconds, 3 Fw-90s burst into flames, while others spiral out of formation, engines smoking. German pilots, previously confident, find their tactics collapsing. Experienced Luftwaffe aces attempt to regroup, but the Mustang's combination of speed, agility, and firepower creates lethal angles of attack. One German pilot later recalled, "We had the advantage of numbers, but the Mustangs had the advantage of control." In seconds, the sky became a trap. The P-51D's firepower is devastating. Not slow, measured bursts, but concentrated surgical volleys capable of disabling enemy aircraft in a heartbeat. By 12:05 p.m., the German formation is shattered. The Mustangs have lost only 1 aircraft, while Luftwaffe losses total 8 confirmed kills and several more damaged. The airspace is now dominated by Allied fighters, allowing the bomber stream to continue unimpeded to its target. The result is not just tactical success. It is a psychological blow. German pilots, accustomed to hunting Allied bombers with minimal resistance, now face an opponent that dictates the terms of engagement. Meanwhile, Mustang pilots report the surreal efficiency of their aircraft. One young pilot described the moment: "You could line up a target, fire, and it was gone before you had time to realize what had happened. It was almost unreal, like the plane had a mind of its own." This sense of precision, of being in command of the engagement reinforces Allied morale. Every sortie further entrenches the Mustang's reputation as a force capable of rewriting the rules of air combat. Across the skies, multiple engagements unfold simultaneously. In southern Germany, another Mustang squadron intercepts a formation of Bf-109s attempting to reach Allied bombers. Using similar tactics, altitude advantage, surprise approach, and concentrated fire. By the afternoon, Luftwaffe command begins to realize the magnitude of the threat. Reports note a pattern. German formations, regardless of experience, are consistently disrupted when facing P-51Ds. Entire sorties fail, and previously routine missions become hazardous gambles. Commanders issue new orders, attempting to reorganize defensive tactics, but the Mustang's range, speed, and firepower make reactive strategies insufficient. The P-51D is no longer just another Allied fighter. It is a strategic weapon capable of altering the course of air battles in a matter of minutes. August 1, 1944. Over the skies of Western Germany, Mustang squadrons face a coordinated Luftwaffe counterattack. Intelligence reports suggest an approaching formation of 50 Bf-109s and Fu-90s, targeting an Allied bomber stream en route to the Ruhr industrial region. The stakes are immense. If the bombers are intercepted, the Allies risk crippling losses that could delay their push into Germany. At 10:32 a.m., the Mustangs, flying in tight V formations at 25,000 feet, spot the incoming fighters. Squadron leaders issue precise commands. Pairs break off to engage, maintaining altitude advantage and utilizing the sun as a natural blinder. The Mustang pilots dive with ruthless efficiency. 640 caliber machine guns unleash torrents of tracer rounds. In under 15 seconds, the air is torn with smoke, fire, and spiraling wreckage. German formations, once confident and disciplined, fracture under the sudden intensity of the Mustang assault. One Luftwaffe pilot later described the chaos. "We thought we knew what the Allies could bring, but in seconds we were reduced to scattering like leaves in a storm." The Mustang was everywhere and nowhere at once. 0 a.m. The Luftwaffe suffers significant losses. 13 aircraft destroyed, another 10 damaged. Allied forces lose only 2 Mustangs. The psychological impact is as important as the physical destruction. Experienced German pilots, accustomed to dominating the skies, now face the realization that the P-51D can nullify their advantages in skill and numbers. Hesitation replaces confidence, and tactical ingenuity can no longer guarantee survival. The success of these engagements reverberates across the Allied command. Mission reports detail how a handful of Mustangs can determine the outcome of entire sorties. Squadron leaders begin to refine offensive tactics further, experimenting with concentrated attacks on key Luftwaffe formations, alternating altitudes, and using coordinated bursts of firepower to maximize impact. The P-51D is no longer just an escort fighter. It has become an instrument of control over the European skies. As August progresses, repeated encounters reinforce this reality. The Mustang's presence forces German pilots into a defensive posture, scrambling to respond to threats that can appear with lethal precision from unexpected angles. Overconfidence is replaced by caution, and the Luftwaffe's ability to project power diminishes steadily. Reports from the front lines describe instances where Luftwaffe pilots, upon spotting Mustangs, abandon missions or break formation preemptively. a testament to the psychological dominance of the aircraft. By late summer 1944, the P-51D has fundamentally shifted the balance of air power over Europe. Its combination of endurance, speed, firepower, and tactical flexibility allows Allied forces to escort bombers with unprecedented safety, disrupt German fighter operations, and control engagement timing. German pilots, once the hunters, are now frequently the hunted. The Mustang has transformed the skies into a place where seconds and decisions carry lethal consequences, and where technological innovation dictates the outcome of human conflict. By late 1944, the impact of the P-51D Mustang on the European air war was undeniable. Luftwaffe units, once confident in their dominance, had been forced into retreat, reorganization, and defensive posturing. The Mustang's combination of speed, maneuverability, and concentrated firepower had shattered the carefully honed tactics of German fighter squadrons. Reports from Allied intelligence noted that German pilots were increasingly hesitant to engage, often breaking off missions at the sight of Mustangs on the horizon. The numerical toll was staggering. During key missions over northern France, the Ruhr Valley, and southern Germany, Luftwaffe losses consistently outpaced replacements. In one notable August mission over the Ruhr, Allied reports confirmed 23 enemy aircraft destroyed in under 30 minutes of combat, while the Allies lost only 4 Mustangs. Such ratios, repeated across multiple sorties, exemplified the destructive efficiency of the Mustang and the growing vulnerability of German air power. Veteran Luftwaffe pilots described the period as the first time the skies truly belonged to the Allies, highlighting a psychological shift that paralleled physical losses. Strategically, the Mustang's effectiveness had far-reaching consequences. Bomber losses declined dramatically, allowing for more ambitious raids deep into Germany, with fewer interruptions. This, in turn, accelerated the degradation of German industrial capacity and undermined morale on the home front. Factories producing tanks, aircraft, and munitions became increasingly vulnerable, while Luftwaffe units were stretched thin defending multiple fronts. Even within Luftwaffe command, the impact was clear. Operational reports from September 1944 highlight attempts to adapt tactics, from higher-altitude patrols to concentrated fighter formations, yet these measures rarely compensated for the Mustang's versatility and reach. German pilots found themselves reacting to the Mustang, rather than executing pre-planned offensive strategies. Intelligence assessments increasingly labeled the aircraft as a game changer, capable of deciding air battles within minutes rather than hours. Beyond raw numbers, the psychological and tactical consequences reshaped the European air war. German pilots faced an enemy that could appear and strike with lethal efficiency before disappearing, forcing defensive maneuvers that often left them vulnerable to Allied counterattacks. Confidence eroded across squadrons, hesitation became a liability, and skilled aviators were lost in engagements where overconfidence once would have guaranteed success. The Mustang had transformed the dynamic from parity to dominance, leaving the Luftwaffe scrambling for solutions that rarely existed. As autumn 1944 approached, the full consequences of the P-51D Mustang's dominance became evident across multiple theaters of operation. Allied air superiority over Western Europe was no longer contested, it was established. Bomber crews, previously haunted by the threat of Luftwaffe interceptors, now flew with a confidence born of tangible protection. Escort missions succeeded in unprecedented numbers, and bombing campaigns reached targets deep in Germany with far fewer losses. Industrial centers, rail networks, and fuel depots were systematically weakened, accelerating the collapse of German resistance on multiple fronts. The Luftwaffe, once the pride of German military aviation, was forced into a defensive spiral. Squadrons were thinned, pilot experience eroded, and tactical flexibility diminished. Training programs could not replace the rapidly dwindling pool of veteran flyers, and morale plummeted as the Mustang repeatedly proved superior in speed, firepower, and endurance. Even ace pilots, who had previously turned the tide in engagements, faced catastrophic losses. Reports from German commanders describe a growing recognition that the Mustang was not just a threat. It was a decisive instrument that had overturned the balance of power in the skies. Allied commanders documented the strategic advantage gained through Mustang operations. The aircraft's long-range capabilities allowed fighter groups to escort bombers from England to the heart of Germany, neutralizing enemy interception attempts and ensuring mission success. The psychological impact on German pilots, fear, hesitation, and shock at the Mustang's efficiency, was as significant as the physical destruction it inflicted. Air superiority was no longer measured only by numbers. It was the ability to dictate the terms of engagement, control altitudes, and impose outcomes within seconds. The broader consequences of the Mustang's success extended beyond individual sorties. With the Luftwaffe increasingly on the defensive, the Allies gained freedom to conduct combined operations, support ground offensives, and disrupt German reinforcements and supply lines. The P-51D had shifted the air war from a contest of attrition to one of strategic dominance. Its presence forced Germany to expend resources, rethink operational priorities, and accept the vulnerability of previously secure zones. The psychological and tactical toll, combined with mounting losses, accelerated the eventual collapse of German resistance in the air. By the end of 1944, the P-51D Mustang had firmly cemented its place in history, not just as a powerful fighter, but as a transformative instrument of war. It reshaped tactics, protected Allied forces, and struck fear into the hearts of the Luftwaffe. Its introduction had proven that technological innovation, when paired with skillful leadership and rigorous training, could decisively alter the course of conflict. The Mustang's legacy was clear. It was no longer merely an aircraft, but a symbol of air superiority, a decisive edge that shifted the momentum of the European air war in favor of the Allies. The story of the P-51D Mustang is not merely one of steel, bullets, and engines. It is a story of transformation. In the skies over Europe, where skill once defined supremacy, technology redefined it. The Mustang arrived as a singular combination of speed, endurance, and firepower, capable of delivering 6.50 caliber rounds in rapid succession and dictating the tempo of aerial combat. For German pilots, its sudden appearance shattered assumptions, undermined confidence, and revealed the limits of experience against innovation. Yet, at its core, the Mustang's success was also a human story. Young Allied pilots, many barely adults, were thrust into a crucible of fear and decision-making. They relied on training, instinct, and the remarkable reliability of their machines to survive engagements that could claim lives in seconds. Meanwhile, the Luftwaffe confronted the brutal reality that overconfidence could no longer guarantee survival. The psychological shock of facing the Mustang underscored a timeless truth. In warfare, perception can be as lethal as firepower. The broader historical significance is clear. The P-51D did more than protect bombers or destroy enemy fighters. It shifted the balance of the European air war. It enabled strategic bombing campaigns to reach deeper into German territory, hastened the depletion of Luftwaffe strength, and reinforced the Allied path toward victory. In doing so, it became a symbol of technological ingenuity, applied with precision, courage, and tactical understanding. Ultimately, the Mustang represents a convergence of human skill and mechanical brilliance. It reminds us that warfare is not only measured in casualties or destroyed aircraft, but in moments of sudden clarity, where preparation meets opportunity, and seconds determine destinies.